Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all. I can see people are tuning in from India, from Canada, from England, from Chicago, from the States, and also there we have a guest from Israel, it seems. And I would like to also accept the presence of the Israelis in this live streaming so that we can probably learn something from them, or maybe they can learn something from us, from myself, and probably they would also reject the fact that genocide or ethnic cleansing or any other sort of barbaric act that is potentially committed against the Palestinians is rejected, and they would agree with us that that is a heinous crime. Just saying that I welcome everyone on this channel, and I'm open for communication so that we can build bridges with everyone, and also try probably to wake up some of the Israelis whose government was trying to keep them asleep in the past months, probably years, especially after the October 7, and push them to an emotional condition to accept what the Israeli government is doing. And speaking of an emotional conditions, guys, this is something that is very important to me because I know from firsthand experience with journalists, whether they are working for legacy media or they're working in any other alternative media, they inject emotional sentiments in the phrases, in the sentences, in the arguments, so that they can manipulate the people, including people who work for alternative media outlets. And this is something that I addressed, and I'm going to show you a short video because, as I promised you guys, I'm trying to post 2 to 3 times per week short videos on my X account, formerly known Twitter, but I'm showing you firsthand here on YouTube without the background music, without the editing before I post it on X. So I'm going to show you that for sure. However, in today's live streaming, guys, I'm going to address Netanyahu's declaration that his occupation forces are going to storm and wage a ground invasion of the highly populated Rafah city near the borders between Gaza Strip and Egypt, and why it is important for Egypt to act now and not later. I'm going to show you what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in this regard during an interview. And surprisingly, a senior BBC journalist, Jeremy Bowen, who is based in or located in Jerusalem, he wrote a critical article of Israel. And this article shows that the mainstream journalists can do a great job if they want to. And this article, in my opinion, is very critical of Israel without using the harsh language. However, anyone who is smart enough to read between the lines can see that Jeremy have had enough of the Israeli crimes in the Gaza Strip, and he wrote a brilliant article in this regard. And then we're going to address how Israel is still breaching the ICJ, International Court of Justice orders on the Gaza Strip. We are going to show you how the UN Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights in Palestine, Francesca Albanese, she came under harsh attack by the foreign ministries of France and Germany. And I'm also going to address with you a court decision that has been made in the Netherlands ordering the Dutch government to stop supplying Israel with stop supporting Israel with jet parts, F-35 jet parts that are used nowadays in the Gaza Strip against the Palestinians. And finally, we're going to address the mental health situation of Joe Biden, which is very, very concerning, guys. Now let's watch together this short, I would say, video that I made. It's 5 minutes, guys, and I'm trying to address here the priorities of the legacy media compared to the Gaza Strip, because they are outraged at Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin instead of being outraged at what Israel is doing in the Gaza Strip. Take a look.
One of the jobs of legacy media is to keep you alarmed and outraged, because under such emotional circumstances, it's easier for them to manipulate you. However, the outrage of legacy media this week and their mouthpieces, who call themselves journalists, was not because Benjamin Netanyahu decided to invade the highly populated city of Rafah, and not because Joe Biden greenlighted this invasion, and not because the Israeli forces murdered this week the 6-year-old girl. Her name was Hind Rajab, alongside her family, and not because the Israeli forces again this week executed a mother and her baby in her arms. All these stories didn't move them. However, what outraged them is the interview of Tucker Carlson with the president of Russia, who is shaping the world to a direction that the planners in Washington do not like. Allow me to tell you why are they really outraged at this interview. Because one, the legacy media is slowly but surely dying. There is no mainstream media outlet that can attract hundreds of millions of views like an independent journalist, Tucker Carlson, on a platform like X. Secondly, because this interview shows that President Putin is not some sort of a nut job, a crazy person who woke up in the morning and decided to invade Ukraine. He is a leader who is capable of giving a long interview, giving a historical context, explaining every single detail that is happening in this conflict, unlike a president like Joe Biden, who cannot even formulate 2 sentences without a teleprompter. So the Americans can see that there is a president in Russia who is skillful, who is competent, unlike their president. Whether they agree with him or not, this is a completely different issue. Also, one of the reasons is because there is an information warfare, and since the Russian offensive against Ukraine, all the Russian outlets in Europe and in the United States were banned, and they didn't want anyone to hear the perspective of Russia. And with one interview with Putin, hundreds of millions of people watched and heard what he has to say about his country and about his motivations. And because the motivations is important, and because nowadays there is a talk that Russia, after Ukraine, is going to invade Poland and the rest of Western countries, especially in Europe, this is the third important factor. Why are they outraged? And that is peace is possible with Russia. However, there are certain politicians and certain people in Europe and in the United States want to give the impression that war is imminent with Russia. Therefore, they have to militarize their societies, they have to introduce military, and they have to also increase the expenditure on the military, in defense, etc., etc. All, of course, from the pockets of the poor and the middle class, taxes over taxes over taxes, and also sending them later to war zones. Therefore, this is why I think it's important for people, whether you agree with Putin or not, to watch him, to watch President Zelensky, to watch President Biden. Probably, just probably, the truth is in the middle. And in my humble experience, it's always the case. It's not black and white. It's always gray. And probably the truth in the middle. And when we know all the facts from all sides, we can bring peace once again to Ukraine, and we can stop this bloodshed in Eastern Europe.
One of our friends says, logging in to like the live stream. I'm at work, Kevork, and I will watch later today, brother. Thank you so much, really, for logging in just to hit the like button. Guys, I encourage you to just hit the like button, thumbs up, because it's really important for the algorithm of YouTube so that more people can see the live streaming is on their feed and they can join this live streaming. It means a lot to me. So guys, the media is outraged at Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin, but not at the atrocities that Israel is committing nowadays. And remember, when this invasion started in the Gaza Strip, Israel told the Palestinians that they have to go to the south. And they even mentioned the Rafah city, right? Because they said and they claimed Rafah is a safe zone. We all remember that, right? Now that Netanyahu is cowardly bombing the highly populated city of Rafah from the air, no one, in my opinion, can deny the absence of, quote, intent to commit genocide. And in my opinion, this is the time for Egypt to intervene. Because the Palestinians will not be able to save themselves from this brutal, barbaric military campaign against them. And the Egyptians, they have, like, only for their own sake and for their own national security interest, they have to get in. This is just my humble opinion, and declare that they are the protector of the Palestinian people, the 2 million people left in the Gaza Strip. And the moment the Egyptian army intervenes in the Gaza Strip, you will see that these 2 million Palestinians are welcoming the Egyptian army, and they are raising the Egyptian flags, and they will be protected under the arms of the Egyptian army. And I don't think that Israel dares to attack the Egyptian side, especially that Egypt is not a hostile country to Israel, by the way. However, there are so many other calculations, whether it be geopolitical calculations or, as you may know, guys, Egypt is a very economically weak country nowadays, and they receive billions of dollars from the United States as military aid every year. Therefore, I think that their dependence on American military aid is also an obstacle for them to go to the Gaza Strip and protect the Palestinian people. But it's like, I do not see any other humanitarian option or any other court that can stop this, right? And the question that I want to answer in this live streaming is, where is the red line, right? Like, where is the line that if Israel crosses, the people who still support Israel, whether in governments or these so-called activists, would say, enough is enough. This is limitless. This is beyond the limits. So I truly see that every time Israel decides to wage another ground offensive in different parts of the Gaza Strip, there are new talking points on social media platforms by the propagandists who work for Israel, and also the politicians. What are they doing, the politicians? What are the politicians in the United States doing in this regard, right? They're helping Israel. And despite all the allegations that the Biden administration is angry and mad at Netanyahu, he still supports Israel, and he still accepted to send a military aid package to Israel. Now that Netanyahu is hosted by mainstream media outlets, and surprise, surprise, guys, nobody is outraged at this journalist and interviewer from the ABC for hosting a war criminal, right? Someone whose country is accused of committing a genocide. It's okay to host him on anyone's mainstream media outlet, but if you host Vladimir Putin, then you are a puppet for Vladimir Putin, and then you are a useful idiot for Vladimir Putin. But Netanyahu is okay.
Victory is within reach. We're going to do it. We're going to get the remaining Hamas terrorist battalions in Rafah, which is the last bastion, but we're going to do it. And in this, I agree with the Americans. We're going to do it while providing safe passage for the civilian population so they can leave.
You've directed the Israeli Defense Forces to evacuate Rafah in advance of this ground invasion. There's an estimated 1.4 million people in that area right now, and as the German foreign minister said, right, they can't just disappear. Where are they supposed to go?
No, well, the areas that we've cleared north of Rafah are plenty of areas there, but we are working out a detailed plan to do so, and that's what we've done up to now. We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way. But we've so far succeeded, and we're going to succeed again. Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying, lose the war, keep Hamas there.
Guys, if I want to evaluate this man, I can safely say he's a psychopath. I can safely say he's a sociopath. I can safely say that he's a pathological liar. I can safely say that he's a criminal. I can safely say that he can kill thousands and thousands of people and not even like blink an eye, right? He's a soulless person. He doesn't feel for the Palestinians. He doesn't feel for the people dying there and being murdered and killed there. And when he was asked, where will the 1.4 million people go? And he's like, there are some places cleared in the north of Rafah. We have a plan, They don't have a plan. They don't have a plan. The plan is to push this 1.4 million and 2 million Palestinians from Rafah to Sinai. He's a liar. He's not telling the truth. The truth is Israel wants to expel the 2 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Sinai. And once they go to Sinai, they will say that these people are posing a security threat on our newly captured the Gaza Strip after they incorporate it into the Israeli state. And then they will try to create another buffer zone in the Sinai, right? So they're not telling the truth. This is a big, big lie in this regard. And I'm happy that finally the BBC journalist, a senior journalist, Jeremy Bowen, he wrote this article. He says, Israel-Gaza war death and Israel's search for, quote, total victory. And I summarized this article for you guys just to get the main points of this article. He says, just after Hamas attacked Israel on 7 October, Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, announced, we are putting a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no gas. It's all closed. We are fighting human animals, he added, and we are acting accordingly. Aid agencies and the UN cite considerable evidence that Israeli security checks slow the supply of relief into Gaza and that Israel restricts the movement of relief convoys inside the strip. Very little medical and food aid has reached northern Gaza this year. After 4 months of war, law and order in Gaza is in fragments. Aid convoys are looted every day. It is said what is left of the local police force stopped protecting convoys after 8 of their men were killed in Israeli raids. Israel is increasingly sensitive about accusations that it is responsible for the suffering of civilians in Gaza because of pressure from its allies, especially the United States, and the genocide case it is facing at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Later this month, it has to show the court that it has improved conditions for non-combatants in Gaza. The Americans have since 7 October urged Israel to respect the laws of war in Gaza, specifically to stop killing so many Palestinian civilians. The fact that American officials from President Biden downwards keep repeating and strengthening their criticisms shows they believe Israel has ignored them. Even so, the US has chosen not to attach conditions to its huge military and diplomatic support for Israel. It continues to supply Israel with weapons, even though it doesn't approve of the way that they are being used. This is the 1 million question, right? Like everybody says that Biden was mad and angry at Netanyahu for deciding to go to Rafah and wage a ground offensive, but at the same time, he approved giving Israel billions of dollars worth of new military package aid, and we're going to discuss that later. We get more information from southern Gaza. We're getting on for 2 million people. We're getting on for 2 million people are trying to stay alive. Some 1.4 million are in Rafah, hard up against the Egyptian border wire. Most people live in tents made of plastic sheeting next to pools of sewage. Palestinians in Rafah are approaching panic about a ground assault into the town by Israeli troops. Look at this scene, man. This is how the city looks like now. This is where Israel wants to wage a military ground incursion. Airstrikes already killed many people in Rafah, but despite American calls for restraint, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has ordered the army to attack the town once it has a plan to move Palestinian civilians out of Rafah. Since nowhere in Gaza is safe, residents do not find that reassuring. Perhaps Mr. Netanyahu is trying to mollify Mr. Biden. Another potential audience might be the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which has ruled that Israel faces plausible allegations that it is committing the crime of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Israel has set a high bar for victory that might be unattainable. Even over many months, it wants to wipe out Hamas, restore Israel's security, and free the hostages Hamas took on 7 October. Many of the families of Israelis held in Gaza and their supporters do not buy the Prime Minister's argument that only force will free the hostages. They want a ceasefire deal, as they fear that the longer the war continues, the less likely it is that they will ever see them again. Israel has inflicted considerable damage on Hamas, but it has not broken its capacity to fight. A senior Western intelligence official told me that Israel had killed about 1/3 of Hamas forces and destroyed about 1/3 of the tunnel network that makes Hamas such an obdurate enemy. Mr. Netanyahu has also said Israel would like to kill Hamas leaders, starting with Yahya Sinwar, the man who it is believed instigated and directed the 7 October attacks. So far, Mr. Sinwar and his closest lieutenants are believed to be alive, perhaps living in the tunnel network shielded by Israeli hostages. I think the issue of the hostages is the most important element that the Israelis has to put pressure on their own government, because there is now an experience with Hamas that when they negotiated through the mediation of Qatar, and the CIA was talking with Qataris, there is an example that Hamas released these hostages, right, in exchange for releasing the hostages of the Palestinians. And there was already a deal only a few days ago between Hamas and Israel for a ceasefire and 3 stages of releasing the hostages from the Palestinian custody in exchange for releasing 1,500 hostages and prisoners from the Israeli prisons, 500 of whom Hamas chooses and picks their names, and the 1,000 others, they are picked and will be chosen by Israel. But Netanyahu decided that he wants a total victory. And total victory means that today, during the heavy bombardment on the Gaza Strip, I think other 2 or 4 hostages were severely injured. And Israel killed many of its hostages during this bombardment campaign. So if the goal is to release the hostages, diplomacy is the way to go. But if the goal is to eliminate Hamas, and we know that eliminating Hamas also, in the package of eliminating Hamas, is also eliminating the Palestinian presence in the Gaza Strip, and the experience of this warfare, that when you watch how the Israeli army is bombarding the city from the air, and how the artilleries are destroying and wiping out entire neighborhoods, how entire families, members of one family, 10, 20 members are dying together, all together with this bombardment, this doesn't give the impression that Israel is fighting only against Hamas. This gives a clear indication, and this was approved by the court in the International Court of Justice, that Israel intends to commit genocide. And with this ground invasion now, against Rafah, they didn't start, but now they're bombarding the Rafah city. When it starts, which it seems that the Israelis are determined on doing it, this is another clear indication that the Israelis want to push the Palestinians from Rafah to the Sinai, and they want to create an influx of exodus, right? An influx of people going to Egypt, and from Egypt, they want to send them to the rest of the world. So this is the truth of the matter. Anyone who tells you anything other than this, he is either completely ignorant or he's paid propagandist, guys. There is no other truth about this case. And if you have eyes, objective eyes to watch the map of control over the Gaza Strip and how the military of Israel is advancing and in what direction and the type of bombardment they are doing, everything is clear. Everything. There is no military expert who would disagree with this fact. But there are some missing facts about Rafah, and I prepared to use some of the missing information in the article of the BBC senior journalist. So we have 1.4 million people, guys, in Rafah city, and of whom 610,000 are children, and they're all trapped in this small city, which constitutes 1/5 of Gaza's total land mass. According to humanitarian organizations in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians in Gaza are on the verge of a famine. 500,000 people, guys, are now at the most severe phase 5 catastrophic level of famine, with imminent risk of mass starvation and death. There are different phases for a famine, and according to the human rights organizations, 500,000 people, so quarter of the people in the Gaza Strip, They are in the phase 5 of catastrophic level of famine with imminent risk of mass starvation and death. Israel destroyed the healthcare infrastructure in Gaza completely. The health system has collapsed, and they occupied many of the hospitals and destroyed them. The death toll in Gaza has risen to 28,000 civilians. And there are thousands are under the rubble. Nobody knows their destiny, right? In my opinion, the death toll now, you can add another 5,000 on the 28,000, so around 33,000 civilians dead. Netanyahu claims that he has a plan to evacuate the Palestinians from Rafah, but the question is, to where? And when he was asked directly, he couldn't answer the question because he doesn't know, and he doesn't have an answer for that, because the only answer is to create an immense pressure and humanitarian catastrophe on the borderline between Egypt and Gaza Strip, so that the Egyptians open their borders and receive the 2 million Palestinians, so that Israel seals the border and tells them, ciao, now it's your responsibility, and let the European countries receive these Palestinian refugees. This is his plan. So Biden repeatedly told Netanyahu not to go into Rafah. However, at the same time, he approved $14.1 billion military aid package to Israel, and money that the United States doesn't have. So they have to print money now, around $15 billion, and give it to Israel as a military aid, which you can add over the $33 trillion debt that the United States has, right? So printing money for the American people is bad, and printing money for the Israeli ally is good. Continue, United States, on this approach. Your future is so bright, printing money and sending your country into catastrophic debt. And whereas your competitors are selling products and improving infrastructure, their economy is booming. They are gaining the hearts and the minds of the people around the world. Continue. That's a really good approach, really. And as I was researching to prepare this live streaming, I found the UN Special Rapporteur. She gave an interview to The Guardian. She says, Israel appears to be in breach of the International Court of Justice orders on Gaza, senior UN official says. And she came under very brutal attack, by the way, because of this, and also because of a statement she made I will show you. She says, Israel appears to be in breach of the orders issued a fortnight ago by the International Court of Justice, requiring it to take immediate steps to protect Palestinians' rights and seize all activities that could constitute genocide, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Occupied Territories, Francesca Albanese, has said. She is an Italian. The Israeli government was given until the 23rd February, so around 12 days from now, to report to the ICJ on what it has done to comply with 6 orders the court issued, including one relating to ending incitement to genocide, and another requiring immediate steps to improve the supply of humanitarian aid. Senior Western officials say that despite hours of negotiations with Israeli officials, there is at best a marginal and incremental improvement since the 26th January ruling. Safe to say, it's dire and getting worse, one senior Western official told The Guardian. The ICJ didn't direct Israel to announce a ceasefire, as South Africa had requested, but by very large majorities, the judges did make orders that were intended to have practical effect. So, what were the orders of the ICJ? First, Israel was required to take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to Palestinians in Gaza after the court found this discernibly genocidal and dehumanizing rhetoric coming from senior Israeli government officials. Israel has not done that. Second, the ICJ required Israel to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance. Israel hasn't done that. Israel was further required to take all measures within its power to prevent, within the scope of the Genocide Convention, the killing of Palestinians, causing them serious bodily or mental harm, inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent birth. I think after this Rafah invasion, planned invasion, I think this is also a breach. So all of them, Israel breached all of them. Despite this, Francesca said the violence and the demolition of civilian infrastructure had continued, aggravating the harsh living conditions in Gaza. Quote, the fatalities are not solely the result of bombings and sniper attacks, she said in an interview with The Guardian. They also occur due to a scarcity of medical supplies and treatment, and most distressingly, due to inadequate access to food and potable water, forcing consumption of contaminated or polluted water. At least 1,755 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since the court order. Now, Francesca got into trouble yesterday, and because she made a tweet, or she quoted a tweet actually, from a statement of Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron says that the October 7 attacks were the worst anti-Semitic attack in the century. And Francesca Albanese, she says, the greatest anti-Semitic massacre of our century. No, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, the victims of the 7 October were not killed because of their Judaism, but in response to Israel's oppression. France and the international community did nothing to prevent it. My respects to the victims. So this was a very controversial, of course, statement from Francesca. And she completely ruled out the possibility that some of the Hamas members attacked on the 7th of October based on any sort of anti-Semitism. And that's why she was under huge attack by the foreign ministry of France itself, which quoted her tweet, and they said this. Okay, so the October 7 massacre is the largest anti-Semitic massacre of the 21st century. Disputing it is a mistake. Seeming to justify it by including the name of the United Nations is a shame. These comments are all the more scandalous since the fight against anti-Semitism and all forms of racism are at the heart of founding of the UN. And it wasn't only the foreign ministry of France, but also the German foreign ministry jumped to the wagon and quoted the response of the French foreign ministry. And they said that they wholeheartedly support the statement of France, and they denounced the UN senior employee in this regard. I want to know your opinion about this case. Do you think, guys, that the militants who broke the siege on Gaza on the 7th of October and attacked against the kibbutzes, their main motivation was anti-Semitism because their enemy were Jews, or because other considerations that Francesca mentioned in this? Let me know your opinions. I would like to know your opinions in this regard. But since we're moving to speaking about genocide and whether there is an intention to commit genocide and whether it is only Hamas who wanted to commit genocide against the Palestinians, against the Jewish people, I want to show you a video that was posted only a few days ago, actually yesterday. And this is on the Israeli channel 14, right? And the guests in this show, with the applause of all the people who are present, guests in this show. I mean, the guests are saying things like, you will die, you will starve, and your homes will be burned. We will take your lands and build settlements on it. People of Gaza, for me, let them starve to death. And it seems that everybody is cheering and applauding. Everybody was happy with this statement.
תמשיכו למות, הבתים שלכם ימשיכו להישרף, הילדים שלכם ימשיכו לחיות בבוץ ובניילון, עד שאחרון החטופים לא בא לכאן חזרה. כן, אנחנו אומרים שאנחנו רוצים לקחת להם אדמה, לקחת להם את השטח, ולהתיישב, כי רק ככה הם יבינו שניצחנו אותם. לא מעניין אותם הבתים, לא מעניין אותם ההרוגים, לא מעניין אותם שום דבר, חוץ מהאדמה.
אני לא מרחם על העזתים האלה. אני לא חושב שיש מישהו במדינת ישראל, בארץ ישראל, שצריך לרחם על העזתים האלה. לא על מבוגרים, לא על קשישים, לא על צעירים ולא על ילדים. העזתים, מבחינתי שירעבו למוות, מה אכפת לי מהם? למה צריכים שיהיה לנו אכפת מהעזתים?
So, the guests are respectively saying, you will die, you will starve, and your homes will be burned. We will take your land and build settlements on it. People of Gaza, for me, let them starve to death. I don't give a F word. This is happening on a public Israeli television, and with a great applause by the audience. I wonder if any Arabic country, I mean, look, I 100% sure you will never find any TV show like this in Syria, for example, or in Lebanon, or in Jordan, or in Egypt. You will not find. You will not find people are disrespecting an entire population, like, let's say, the Israelis like this, and they say, we don't care about them, let them die, let them starve, all this stuff. You will not find. It's even like, it's about self-respect. For them, they are disrespecting themselves if they say something like this. This is something about morality, you know? You will not find something like this on Arabic TV. And in the Arabic countries, they call them the backward people. They call them savages. You will never see something like this on Arabic TV. This is the truth. In Netherlands, guys, there is a new court order, and the court says that the Netherlands has to halt delivery of fighter jet parts to Israel. A Dutch court has ordered the government to halt the delivery of parts of F-35 fighter jets used by Israel in its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. The order followed an appeal by human rights organizations against a lower court decision rejecting their argument that supplying the parts contributed to alleged violations of international law by Israel. Last year, human rights organizations in the Netherlands accused the government of being complicit in the alleged war crimes committed by Israel during its war in Gaza due to its exports of F-35 fighter jet parts. Amnesty International and Oxfam branches in the Netherlands argued that the shipments were, quote, contributing to wide scale of serious violations of humanitarian law by Israel in Gaza. In December, a court dismissed the case and said the government must be given much freedom when deciding on political and policy issues on arms exports. However, the appeals court on Monday ordered the Dutch government to block all exports of F-35 fighter jets parts to Israel within 7 days. It is undeniable that there is a clear risk the exported F-35 parts are used in serious violations of humanitarian law, the court said. Israel has repeatedly denied allegations of committing war crimes during its military operation in Gaza. However, the International Court of Justice in January called on Israel to guard against any activities in the enclave that could constitute genocide. I mean, under such circumstances, such steps are welcomed, right? However, what is the origin of the F-35, right? It's from the United States. So it is a Dutch company probably producing some of the spare parts for these F-35s that the Americans can replace. So this is not going to have any tangible impact on the discourse of the hostilities against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in any way or shape. So such decisions could be safe-facing attempts by the Dutch government to say, look, since the ruling of the ICJ, we respect the ruling, and we urge Israel to respect humanitarian law, blah blah blah. And our court decided not to supply them with the spare parts, so we are not responsible for what they do, and we're not complicit with any potential genocide that the Israelis are committing in the Gaza Strip. This is similar to this report that says, I mean, this is so ironic. President Biden is very angry at Benjamin Netanyahu and called him names for deciding to go to the Rafah, and all this stuff. I mean, come on, man. This is just, what if this is just a safe phasing measure for Biden himself because he's losing points, electoral points, due to his support to the Israelis against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. I mean, he can say something, but then he can do something else. How can you justify sending for what's the percentage? $14.1 billion new military package aid to Israel, right? In the middle of these hostilities in the Gaza Strip. And then they say you are against the Israeli policy. I mean, it's very hypocritical, you know? And somebody like Antony Blinken, I don't know how he has the audacity to post videos like this anyways, but he posted a video from the plane giving us the happy news that he's going to the Middle East again for a pathway toward an enduring peace and security for Israelis, Palestinians, and everyone in, like, since the October 7th. Name me one achievement to the Secretary of State or one achievement to the diplomacy of the United States in decreasing the tensions in the region. Name me one, you will not find. And despite that, he has the audacity to post this video. Take a look.
This is my 5th trip to the region, the Middle East, since October 7th. I had meetings and traveled to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel, and the West Bank. And the focus of these meetings was on trying to secure an agreement to get hostages home, to do more to address the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. During the trip, we got a response from Hamas on the proposal that we've designed with Qatar and Egypt on the hostages. And while there's some clear non-starters in what Hamas has sent back, we also see it as giving us space to pursue an agreement and to get hostages back with their families where they belong. Israelis on October 7th were dehumanized in the most horrific way possible. The hostages continue to be dehumanized every single day, but that cannot be a license to dehumanize others. The overwhelming majority of people in Gaza, men, women, and children, had nothing to do with October 7th. We can't lose sight of their humanity. We will continue to pursue a real pathway to enduring peace, to enduring security, for Israelis, for Palestinians, for everyone in the region. And it's a future that we're going to be working toward in the weeks and months ahead.
Name me one achievement of Antony Blinken in the Middle East. You cannot. And while he speaks about this, the Pentagon, the CENTCOM, they are waging war in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria. They're assassinating people here and there. And and at the same time sending their Secretary of State to the region for what? What can you offer? What type of offer do you have in your pocket when you arrive to Palestine or to Jordan or to Egypt? Name me show me your plan. You don't even have a roadmap for peace in the region. You're just talking. It's just about talk. And speaking of the Blinken and the Biden administration, and this really raises the question, right? Is Biden in charge? Does he even know what's happening in the Gaza Strip? Is he even capable mentally? Is he I don't want to use the term competent. I just want to say that, is the man fit enough to know what's happening in the Gaza Strip? Because as you know, 3 days ago, we had a case, and the special prosecutor in President Biden's classified documents case, he declined to press criminal charges, citing Biden was unable to remember his time as vice president. So it seems that President Biden took some of the classified documents with him to home or to some of his offices, to his personal private properties, and he forgot them there. And there were many of these documents. And now the special prosecutor in Biden's classified documents case, he declined to press criminal charges, citing Biden was unable to remember his time as vice president. The defense of Biden said, an elderly man with poor memory. This is how they defended Joe Biden. They said he is just an elderly man with a poor memory. And I was reading this post on X by Wesley Hunt. He says, this elderly man with poor memory has the nuclear codes. This elderly man with poor memory just authorized a military strike against Iranian-backed targets in the Middle East. This elderly man with poor memory is leading a proxy war against Russia. This elderly man with bad memory, poor memory, is the commander-in-chief of our armed forces. How can Biden's own Justice Department claim he is incompetent to stand trial, while at the same time his administration claims he is fully capable of discharging the duties of president? Two-tiered justice. This is the video that he posted. I hope that there is no copyright on this video and the music, but let's watch it together.
You saw the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago. What did you think to yourself? How anyone could be that irresponsible?
Major developments concerning the classified documents case involving President Biden.
A new statement from the White House special counsel. Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury as an elderly man with a poor memory.
Joe Biden came across to investigators as elderly man with poor memory.
We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter.
Robert Hur does not plan to file any criminal charges in the case.
This report seems to say that he's not going to face criminal charges. 345-page report by the special counsel stopped short of recommending criminal charges.
It's just totally irresponsible.
Yeah. I mean, I found another video, and this one says, Joe Biden defiant following report branding him an elderly man with a poor memory. Great video compilation of events that unfolded this week on Biden's mental decline. Very well done. Joe Biden's fitness to continue as president is beginning to be questioned after a special counsel investigation into the handling of classified documents said he portrayed himself as an elderly man with a poor memory. Robert Hur said President Biden had willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after he was vice president and he was a private citizen, and his actions present serious risks to national security. But the prosecutor said he chose not to bring the criminal charges following a 15-month investigation because Mr. Biden cooperated and would likely be difficult to convict. Take a look at this video compilation of Joe Biden when he keeps forgetting things and his dementia is hitting hard.
President Biden arrived back at the White House early last night into a personal storm, which would within a few hours become worse still.
Can we ask you about the special counsel's claims about your memory?
He knew that he'd need to address the release of an extraordinary assessment by a Justice Department special counsel of his state of mind. It had been published a couple of hours earlier, a report detailing why Joe Biden would not be charged for holding classified documents at his Delaware home. But the lack of charges was not the story. The story was him. Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited. He did not remember when he was vice president, wrote the Justice Department's special counsel about interviews with the president. He did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died, and his memory appeared hazy when describing the Afghanistan debate that was once so important to him. And as for why he wouldn't be facing charges, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. It's been made all the more awkward because it's not been a good week, mixing up French presidents.
And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said...
And forgetting who Israel is fighting in Gaza.
Said, there's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition.
Awkward to watch, and already raising questions before this report's release.
3 times in just a couple days, the president getting the name of a leader wrong and referencing somebody who is deceased.
In meetings with the president, how often does he confuse names?
Not to belabor the point, but how would you describe the president's overall health?
By 7:30 last night, he knew he needed to take back control, or try to. A news conference announced with just 30 minutes notice.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president.
Defiance.
There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that?
But hardly control. Then, without explanation, he chose to return to the podium to talk about Gaza, and in doing so, undermined all he had just said.
Initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate.
More mix-ups, the presidents of Mexico and Egypt. And so the questions about his fitness for office and decision to run again have in a few short hours been supercharged.
Man, the Americans deserve way better, really. And some of who is telling me that Kamala Harris is in charge. Yeah, look, she came in defense of him. Look.
So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated. So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated. So
continue. Please continue the way you are, United States. Either Biden is an elderly man with a poor memory or he needs to be charged. Pick one. And her notes that Biden committed a serious felony, but based on the prosecutor's interactions and conversations, it was clear that Biden would create reasonable doubt with a jury who might never believe he was capable of a mental state of willfulness. As many people have pointed out, dementia is typically used as a consideration for leniency during the sentencing phase, not an excuse to avoid prosecution. But if Biden's age is his superpower, as Bill McKibben argues, then the DOJ has a responsibility to bring charges against the president after he leaves office. What makes this especially difficult for Democrats is that Donald Trump is being prosecuted for the same exact crime. Double standards no longer matter, but this is a bit on the nose. And as her notes, Biden had documents from the 1970s and knew he was in possession of them since 2017 at least. There were 300 of these documents, not 6, as the White House initially claimed. Which leaves us with two questions. If Biden is too old to be charged, isn't he too old to hold the most powerful position in the world? And if he is not too old to hold the most powerful position in the world, why is he too old to be charged? Good questions. I know this is a biased article from a Republican author, but those are legitimate points made, right? And to answer the question of today's live streaming, guys, where is the red line? And what is the line that if Israel crosses, the pro-Zionist side will say that enough is enough? And I posed this question on my X account, and I said, what is the red line that pro-Zionist camp would not allow Israel to cross? And I received this brilliant comment by Daniel Prinsloo. He's from South Africa, and he says, there is no red line for the pro-Zionists. Netanyahu has given a date for when he wants the evacuation of Rafah completed. The evacuation of 1.3 million Gazans is to be done before the start of Ramadan, which starts on the 9th of March. This is the timeline from now until then, when we will see the acceleration of Israeli military operations in South Gaza. That's 27 days of displacing people who have nowhere to go. What is the Israeli plan? What do they want to achieve? The Palestinians in the south of Gaza have 27 days for the world, and especially the Arab world, to react and help them. This will be a turning point in what is a bloody and ruthless genocide. We must do all we can. We will not allow the Palestinians to stand alone and let Rafah be their last stand. Every day of the next 27 days matter. Every single day. I cannot agree more with him, seriously. And this is why at the beginning of this live streaming, I said this is the right time now for Egypt to intervene and claim to be the protector of the Palestinians, because geographically speaking, there is no another country can intervene and send an army to the Gaza Strip. People are telling me on X, but the Yemenis can. The Yemenis can just disturb the trade routes of Israel. They cannot stop what's happening there. The only party that can now protect the Palestinians physically and send an army there is Egypt. And I hope my Egyptian friends do not consider this a criticism to them. I'm not here to criticize them. I'm just here to say that it's also in the national security interest of Egypt to intervene and stop the influx of millions of Palestinians to Egypt, because then the security threat from Israel will come against them in Sinai. So they have to, for the sake of their national security interest, they have to protect the Palestinians if they don't want to take other considerations into account. This is just my humble opinion. I hope that there are people in Egypt are thinking ahead, and I'm sure there are people thinking ahead, and I hope that this misery would end really soon, because I'm feeling sick and tired logging in every day on X and watching these videos, babies dying every day, executions of civilians every day. It's like you cannot even eat your food anymore without thinking about Gaza. You know, you cannot just act normal, like go to, the other day we went to a restaurant, for example. You cannot really like pretend that everything is normal, right? This has to come to an end. Guys, thank you very much for watching today's live streaming. I really appreciate you all, and I truly appreciate if you just hit the like button before leaving this live streaming. It helps me immensely with the algorithm of YouTube. Rest assured that the moment you leave this live streaming, this video will be demonetized because there is the word Israel in the description and in the title. So I have to apply for them to take a look for the second time that there is nothing controversial I'm saying in this video, but until then the video will be suppressed. So I truly appreciate if you just thumbs up, hit the like button, and if you want to support my independent work like I'm doing this live streamings, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, and I will see you tomorrow on Tuesday 5 p.m. Central European time. Guys, peace be upon you. Salam.